No one believed a coal miner's son could hustle his way into Hollywood, befriend James Dean and Elvis Presley, and buy himself an Oscar nomination. Then was found dead at 36, under circumstances so strange that even the coroner couldn't decide what happened. On the evening of February 7th, 1968, a divorce attorney named Irvin Roeder forced open the back window of a house in Coldwater Canyon, California. He climbed inside and made his way upstairs to a bedroom where the light was still on. And there, sitting on the floor, fully clothed in blue jeans and boots, his back propped against the wall, was his client, staring at nothing. Nick Adams was 36 years old. The coroner, who performed the autopsy, was the most famous medical examiner in American history, a man named Thomas Noguchi, who had already handled Marilyn Monroe and would later handle Robert Kennedy and Sharon Tate. When Noguchi filed his final report on March 3rd, 1968, he did something he almost never did. He checked 3 boxes on the death certificate: accidental, suicidal, undetermined, because the evidence told 3 different stories, and none of them made sense. But what makes this story truly extraordinary is not how Nick Adams died. It is how he lived. Because this was a man who hitchhiked to Hollywood with $80, replaced John Barrymore's portrait with his own headshot at Carnegie Hall, crashed a John Ford meeting in his Coast Guard uniform, became James Dean's closest friend, Elvis Presley's running buddy, and then bought himself an Academy Award nomination with $8,000 in trade ads. He was called a genius. He was called a leech. He was called both of those things by the same people. This is the story of Nick Adams. And no one believed he would become any of these things. Here is why they were wrong. Number 1, no, by God, they will not. He was born Nicholas Aloysius Adamshock on July 10th, 1931, in Nanticoke, Pennsylvania. If you have never heard of Nanticoke, that is the point. It was an anthracite company town in Luzerne County, where the coal dust hung in the air like fog, and the life expectancy underground was a conversation nobody wanted to have. His father, Peter Adamshock, was a Ukrainian immigrant who went into the mines as a teenager. His mother, Catherine Cutts Adamshock, sewed the family's shirts and underwear from bleached flour sacks because there was no money for fabric. The moment that changed everything happened around 1936, when Nick was 5 years old. His uncle was crushed in a cave-in. The company doctor came to the house afterward, looked at Peter's 2 boys, patted little Nick on the head, and said, "You have got 2 fine boys. They will make good miners." Peter Adamshock looked at that doctor and said, "No, by God, they will not." Within 2 days, the family had piled everything they owned into a broken-down car and driven to Jersey City, New Jersey. A man named Cohn hired Peter as superintendent of an apartment building for $30 a month, plus a free basement apartment. Nick attended Henry Snyder High School, where he lettered in 3 sports: football, basketball, track. But when he tried out for the senior class play, they turned him down. The kid, who would one day be nominated for an Academy Award, could not make a high school stage. He told that story to journalist Joe Hyams years later. He never forgot it. That rejection burned in him for the rest of his life. Number 2, the $7 headshot that replaced John Barrymore. In 1948, at 17 years old, Nick wandered into auditions at the Carnegie Recital Hall in New York City. And here, something happened that would define the rest of his life. Another young actor from a Ukrainian coal mining family near Nanticoke was there that day. His name was Jack Palance. Palance recognized a fellow son of the anthracite belt and introduced the kid on the spot to the casting people as Nick Adams, helping him land a part in a play called The Silver Tassie. The name stuck. He never legally changed it. He just became Nick Adams that afternoon in a rehearsal hall in Manhattan. And then he pulled his first stunt. He paid $7 for a professional headshot, walked into the Carnegie Hall lobby, removed a portrait of John Barrymore from the wall, and hung his own photograph in its place. He signed it to Carnegie Hall. Sincerely, Nick Adams. He was 17 years old and already understood something most people never learn. In Hollywood, nobody gives you permission. You take it. In January of 1950, at 18, he hitchhiked to Los Angeles with $80 in savings. He had scrawled, "Hollywood, here I come," across the front of his bank passbook. He told his parents he was taking the bus. His brother Andy shipped his suitcase out separately. The trip took 10 days. When he arrived, he got a job as an $18 a week usher at the Warner Brothers Theater in Beverly Hills. He was fired for paying a sign painter to add "with Nick Adams" to a Preview Tonight marquee outside the theater. He got caught stealing a 29-cent package of bologna because he had not eaten in 2 days. He washed dishes. He fried eggs at a drive-in. He was starving. But even starving, he was working the room. An actress named Virginia Gray heard him doing Cagney impressions at the grill and sent him to her agents. The hustle never stopped, not even for hunger. Number 3, the sailor who crashed John Ford's office. Drafted in January of 1952, Adams served 3 years in the United States Coast Guard as electrician's mate second class. Most men would have considered that time wasted. Nick Adams turned it into the greatest audition of his life. In June of 1954, with his ship docked at Long Beach, he read in Hedda Hopper's newspaper column that legendary director John Ford was casting Mr. Roberts at Warner Brothers Studios. Adams put on his dress whites, walked to the studio gate, talked his way past the guard, and burst uninvited into a meeting between Ford and producer Leland Hayward. Before anyone could throw him out, he launched into impressions of James Cagney, Cary Grant, and Marlon Brando, one right after the other. John Ford, who wore an eye patch after years of hard living, lifted the patch, stared at this uninvited sailor standing in the middle of his office, and said to Hayward, "He is a spunky little bastard, is he not? Sign him up." That is a documented quote. And it opened a door that Nicholas Aloysius Adamshock from Nanticoke, Pennsylvania, had been trying to kick down since he was 17 years old. Peter Winkler, in his definitive biography, Who Killed Nick Adams, published by Bear Manor Media, documents how this single moment launched a career that would touch 3 of the biggest male icons of the 20th century, because the next person Nick Adams befriended would change his life forever. Number 4, the best friend James Dean ever had. In early 1955, Adams was cast as Chick in a film called Rebel Without a Cause, starring a young actor he had first met 5 years earlier while dancing in the background of a Coca-Cola commercial at Griffith Park. That actor was James Dean. On the set of Rebel, the two became inseparable. They did parodies of Elia Kazan, directing Brando. They roamed Hollywood together, looking for trouble and usually finding it. When filming ended, Dean issued a press release naming Adams, alongside Natalie Wood and Sal Mineo, as about the only friends I have in this town. But even then, the whispers had started. Columnist Erskine Johnson publicly nicknamed Adams the Leech. Elvis biographer Peter Guralnick introduced him in Last Train to Memphis as flatly a Hollywood hustler. Producer Andrew Fenady, who genuinely loved Nick, described him with surgical precision. His hobby was his career, and his career was his obsession. He was the most electric person in any room he entered, and the most exhausting. When James Dean was killed in a car crash on September 30th, 1955, Adams did something that revealed the duality at the core of his personality. He grieved. The grief was real, but he also immediately began monetizing it. Director George Stevens hired him to overdub Dean's slurred dialogue in the banquet scene of Giant, because Stevens had seen them together and knew Adams could match his cadence. Adams sold articles to fan magazines about Dean. He posed at Dean's grave in Fairmount, Indiana, with mourning fans. He starred in a Life magazine expose in September of 1956, where he posed smoking among Dean memorabilia and claimed police checked his home 8 to 10 times a day to protect him from stalker fans. It was grief and self-promotion fused into a single act. And Hollywood saw right through it, but Hollywood also kept hiring him. Number 5. The Typewriter, Elvis Never Forgot. On August 23, 1956, Nick Adams walked onto the 20th Century Fox backlot, where a young singer from Memphis was shooting his first movie, Love Me Tender. That singer was Elvis Presley. Elvis could quote dialogue from Rebel Without a Cause from memory. He spotted Adams, and the connection was instant. Within weeks, Adams flew to Memphis, stayed 8 days at Elvis's Audubon drive home, opened the September 26th Tupelo homecoming concert with comic impressions, and rode on the back of Elvis's Harley through the streets of Memphis. He carried a typewriter with him everywhere he went. Elvis told people, "Yep, we are doing a book." That manuscript, written in 1956 with Elvis's full cooperation, sat in a memorabilia box for 45 years until Adams's daughter Allison published it in 2012 as The Rebel and the King through Waterdancer Press. It remains the single most important first-person document about Nick Adams that exists. And in its pages, you can see something remarkable. Adams could write. He was perceptive and funny and observant. He noticed things about Elvis that the professional biographers would not document for decades. But he could never stop performing long enough to let his talent speak for itself. Elvis's mother Gladys sized Nick up in one sentence: "He sure is a pushy little fellow." Biographer Elaine Dundee wrote that, of all Elvis's new Hollywood friends, Nick Adams, by background and temperament the most insecure, was also his closest. When Gladys died in August of 1958, Adams flew to Memphis and slept beside Elvis's bed because Elvis did not want to be alone. Colonel Parker wrote in a letter that Nicky Adams came out to be with Elvis, which was so very kind of him. That was the paradox of Nick Adams. He would hustle you, and he would hold you in your darkest hour, and you could never be entirely sure which one was happening at any given moment. Number 6. 76 episodes and a theme song by Johnny Cash. At Andrew Fennedy's New Year's Eve party in 1958, Adams cornered his friend and said, "Look, I am tired of playing somebody's pal. How about doing a series for me?" He wrote the pilot in 4 days. The character was Johnny Yuma, a Confederate veteran wandering the post-Civil War frontier. Adams, Fennedy, and director Irvin Kershner formed a production company called Fenker-Ada Incorporated, partnered with Goodson Todman Productions, and sold the show to ABC in May of 1959. The Rebel premiered on Sunday, October 4th, 1959, at 9 p.m. Eastern on ABC. It ran 2 seasons, 76 episodes. It commanded a 35% share of the Sunday evening audience and put Adams on the cover of TV Guide twice. Adams wanted Elvis to sing the theme song, and Elvis reportedly recorded a version. But the producers chose Johnny Cash, who recorded the Ballad of Johnny Yuma and guest starred in episode 13. For the first and only time in his life, the hustle matched the talent. Nick Adams was a genuine television star with his own show, his own production company, and his own place in American living rooms every Sunday night. But the clock was all ticking. ABC was pulling back from violent westerns after congressional hearings on juvenile delinquency. A New York Times report singled out The Rebel as a favorite of inmates at 2 correctional facilities. When Fennedy tried to sell a follow-up series, ABC offered only 17 episodes. Fennedy shopped it to NBC instead. And ABC retaliated by canceling The Rebel. Just like that, Johnny Yuma rode off into the sunset, and Nick Adams was scrambling again. Number 7. $8,000 for an Oscar he would never hold. In 1963, Adams landed the role of Ben Brown in an MGM courtroom drama called Twilight of Honor, opposite Richard Chamberlain in his first film lead. He played a poor, dumb hick Air Force veteran accused of killing an off-duty cop. It was the kind of raw, intense performance that should have relaunched his career. But Adams did not trust the performance to speak for itself. He never trusted anything to speak for itself. He spent approximately $8,000 of his own money on full-page trade ads in Variety and The Hollywood Reporter, lobbying Academy members directly for a Best Supporting Actor nomination. At the time, this kind of open campaigning was considered vulgar. His publicist, Jay Bernstein, later admitted the devastating irony. The problem was, Nick got cut out of the movie. All of his great scenes were gone. And there were just reaction shots. Adams had campaigned his way into a nomination for a performance that had been edited out of his own film. He was nominated at the 36th Academy Awards on April 13, 1964, alongside Bobby, Darren, Hugh Griffith, John Huston, and the eventual winner, Melvyn Douglas for HUD. Columnist Sidney Skoll reported that Adams and his wife Carol arrived at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium at 5:30 p.m., went into the empty theater, and practiced walking, skipping, and trotting down the aisle to the stage. When Brandon DeWilde accepted on behalf of Douglas, he wrote that Nick looked like instant murder. The fallout was catastrophic. He publicly announced his divorce on The Les Crane Show without telling his wife first. At a press lunch at Sardi's, Variety reported he sat not touching his food, staring fixedly into space, calling his B-movie Young Dillinger the Allied artists' equivalent of Tom Jones. He had a 5-picture deal with MGM. Only 3 films were made. Nick Adams had invented the modern Oscar campaign, and it destroyed him. Number 8, Godzilla movies and a nervous breakdown in Tokyo. With no American offers coming in, Adams broke his own Screen Actors Guild pledge against overseas productions and signed with producer Henry Saperstein of UPA for 3 films with Japan's Toho Studios. He shot Frankenstein Conquers the World in 1965, playing a radiologist, and Invasion of Astro Monster, playing an astronaut alongside Akira Takarada. The budgets ran roughly $800,000. Frankenstein earned 93 million yen at the Japanese box office. These were real movies with real audiences. But back in Hollywood, they were Godzilla pictures, and Nick Adams was now officially a Godzilla actor. His daughter, Allison Adams, described what happened next in a 2017 interview that should be required reading for anyone who thinks Hollywood chews people up by accident. After my father lost the Academy Award, he could not get arrested in Hollywood. He was forced to take these jobs in Japan, something he said he would never do. Basically, while he was making these Japanese Godzilla movies, he was having a nervous breakdown. Co-star Yoshio Tsuchiya recalled Adams collapsing on set because he refused to eat anything except a single nightly cup of coffee. He was reportedly addicted to Benzedrine. His wife Carol had a nickname for him, P.T. Barnum on Benny's. He had a public affair with Japanese co-star Kumi Mizuno during filming and proposed marriage to her. She turned him down. He came back to America to a divorce proceeding that included a restraining order, a $110,000 defamation suit from his wife's boyfriend, and a career that had shrunk to 5 television episodes in all of 1967. The biggest hustler in Hollywood had run out of rooms to hustle. Number 9. The night the coroner checked 3 boxes. In late January of 1968, Adams flew to Rome at his own expense to co-star in a film called Murder in the Third Dimension. When he arrived, he discovered the production had fallen apart. Actress Susan Strasberg described meeting a thoroughly demoralized Adams in a Roman bar bitterly cursing the movie business. He flew back to Los Angeles and moved into a rented house at 2126 El Roble Lane in Coldwater Canyon. A $54,000 Cape Cod, empty rooms that echoed. On the evening of February 7th, 1968, his divorce attorney, Irvin Tip Roeder, a former LAPD officer whom Adams had been calling as many as 6 times a day, drove to the house after Adams failed to show for dinner and had been unreachable for 2 days. Roeder saw the bedroom light on and Nick's car in the garage. The front door was locked. He forced open a back window, climbed inside, and found Adams upstairs, sitting on the floor, fully clothed in shirt, blue jeans, and boots. Back against the wall, eyes open, not breathing. Dr. Thomas Noguchi, the Los Angeles County Chief Medical Examiner, performed the autopsy. In his 1983 memoir, Coroner, Noguchi described the case as one of the most forensically puzzling he ever handled. The cause of death was paraldehyde and promazine intoxication. Paraldehyde is a foul-tasting sedative prescribed for alcoholics going through delirium tremens. Promazine, sold under the brand name Spirine, is a tranquilizer. The American Medical Association warned these 2 drugs should never be combined. Both had been prescribed to Nick Adams by his own brother, Dr. Andrew Adamshock. But here is what made the case impossible to close. No vial, no glass, no container was found near the body to explain how Adams swallowed the paraldehyde. No syringe was recovered. No needle marks were found on his body. No suicide note existed. No alcohol was in his blood. He was sitting upright and fully dressed, not collapsed on a bed. He had visited his friend Robert Conrad in the hospital just days earlier, full of energy and stories about Mexico with another film project supposedly lined up. He had spent the previous Saturday playing with his children. On March 3rd, 1968, Noguchi filed his ruling and did something almost unprecedented. He checked 3 boxes: accidental, suicidal, undetermined. He could not choose because the evidence would not let him. Number 10, the lawyer who took his secrets to a second grave. Nick Adams was 36 years old when he died on February 7th, 1968. He was buried at Saints Cyril and Methodius Ukrainian Catholic Cemetery in Berwick, Pennsylvania. Not far from the coal mines, his father swore his sons would never enter. The back of his gravestone carries a silhouette of him wearing his Civil War cap from the Rebel and an inscription that reads, "Nick Adams, the Rebel, actor of Hollywood screens." But the story did not end at the cemetery gates. His son Jeb Stuart Adams later told biographer Peter Winkler that he was 99.99% sure his father was murdered. He pointed to attorney Irvin Roeder, the man who found the body, suggesting Roeder may have given his father pills and a drink that combined fatally, or that something darker had happened involving misappropriated funds. That accusation might have faded into tabloid speculation, except for what happened 13 years later. On June 10th, 1981, Tip Roeder and his wife, actress Jenny Maxwell, who had been Elvis Presley's co-star in Blue Hawaii, were shot dead in the lobby of their Beverly Hills apartment building. The killer was never caught. The murder of Nick Adams's attorney remains unsolved to this day. And whatever Roeder knew about what happened inside that house on El Roble Lane in February of 1968, he took it with him into a grave of his own. Here is what the record shows. Nicholas Aloysius Adamshock was born in a coal town in 1931. His father said, "No, by God, they will not," and drove his family out of the mines forever. Nick replaced John Barrymore's portrait with his own $7 headshot at Carnegie Hall. He hitchhiked to Hollywood with $80. He crashed John Ford's office in dress whites and got signed on the spot. He became James Dean's closest friend and monetized the grief when Dean died. He became Elvis Presley's running buddy and wrote a book about it that sat in a box for 45 years. He starred in 76 episodes of The Rebel with a theme song by Johnny Cash. He spent $8,000 to buy himself an Oscar nomination for a performance that had been edited out of his own movie. He made monster films in Tokyo while having a nervous breakdown. He married a woman after 29 days and never officially divorced her. And he was found dead, sitting upright in blue jeans and boots with 2 drugs in his system that should never have been combined. No container, no needle marks, no note. And the only person who might have had answers was himself murdered 13 years later. His producer, Andrew Fenady, said it best. His hobby was his career, and his career was his obsession. That obsession got him into every room in Hollywood, and it is what ultimately locked him out of all of them. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and join us as we uncover the forgotten legends of classic Hollywood. Because the stories that Hollywood buried are the ones that deserve to be told. And somewhere in a Pennsylvania cemetery, under a headstone carved with a Confederate cap and an inscription that calls him the Rebel, the coal miner's son who replaced John Barrymore's portrait with his own, is still hanging on that wall. Just like he always was, just like he always will be.